Okay, let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever Great Demo Learning Series or webinar series. Hey, so first I'd just say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Never Stop Learning webinar series, a dynamic platform where we share best practices, insights, and all types of things to help organizations embrace more deals, increase competition, and improve software sales. My name's Paul Pearce. I'm the president of Great Demo, and I'll be your moderator and host today to share some great information with you. So today we're going to dive into our webinar and focus just not on meeting, but hopefully exceeding the ever evolving challenges faced in software sales and customer success. The series is designed specifically for you, the trailblazers, the frontliners, essentially, that are interfacing with clients on a daily basis. So we believe in the power of continuous learning and the transformative impact it can have on you. And that's why we host weekly articles that hopefully you've subscribed to and can see, and are now hosting our monthly webinar series as we see here today. So as we embark on this journey today, we just encourage you to ask as many questions as you like. Hit us up in chat. Let's make this a conversation as we go through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start the webinar and get things kicked off. And in order to do so, I'd love to introduce our co-hosts, our experts today. First, let me start. What's that? I said, well, first, let me start with Peter Cohan. So Peter is the founder of The Second Derivative, the author of Great Demo Edition 3, as well as Doing Discovery, an absolute expert in the industry. Peter, I think you and I have had a business relationship for over 20 years. You've trained nearly every solution consultant I've had in my organizations. We've been partners together for over 10 years. You're a personal friend. So thank you so much for joining today, sharing some of your knowledge with us.
Truly my pleasure.
As well as mine. Alex Smith is the co-founder of Kuvama, an absolute expert on discovery, information, best practices, and knowledge, and one of the recent authors of an amazing insight and report on the 2024 state of the B2B sales and discovery and enablement processes, things that we're going to talk about in great depth today. So Alex, as a partner of Great Demo and a friend as well, just wanted to thank you for joining us. Anything that you'd like to say or share before we dive in?
Nothing. No, thank you. Great to be here, Paul.
Wonderful. We've got about 45 minutes scheduled for the day, may go a moment over. A lot of great information. Let's jump in. And before we get into a lot of details from you two experts, I wanted to share something. Peter, this came from one of your books, Doing Discovery. Some folks may have seen this next slide a time or two. I just wanted to highlight at least your assessment scale for discovery skills. And I love this because it starts in 7 different levels, if you will. And it starts here at first just uncovering statements of pain. And what you had said in the past is like, hey, level 1, perhaps that a lot of customer-facing individuals get to is first understanding statements of pain. And then to take it to the next level, you've said things like, when you start to advance that skill level, you explore more deeply. I think you call it probing questions and other things. However, but getting a little bit past pain to the third level, which is actually investigating the impact with an organization and your constituents. In your methodology, of course, that's called the CBI, or the critical business issue. But then taking it to the next level is, if you understand the impact, can you actually get to the place where you can quantify value, and typically in the form of time, people, or money, but quantifying that value before we take it to the next level. I actually think level 5 could move in a lot of different places, but it's to then re-engineer the client's vision with a bias towards your company's capabilities. This is where, Peter, I think you say, this is where you start to teach people things and introduce things that perhaps they hadn't quite learned. And with these 5 levels, we can then take it 2 levels more with number 6 right here. Can you do this? And can you apply it to a lot of different sales situations, people across the technology adoption curve, different industries, and then more importantly, use all of those skills and put it in a repeatable discovery process that is essentially a methodology. which regardless of where you're at or who you're speaking to, you got a process to get the information you need to help increase sales and success and win more deals. So the question I have for everyone in the webinar right now, I'm curious about this. Where do you think you're at? In your chat dialog box, type in your level, if you would. I'm curious just to see where you think you're at today. As an example, do you actually get to the true impact of problems and pains that customers are having at a level 3? Do you quantify the value on almost every deal? Now, a value is different than a benefit. Value is quantifiable. And number 5, do you teach your clients things? Can you do it repeatably? I see a lot of things coming in. Josh, I see yours, and Sean, Jessica. I see some folks that are right there in the middle.
I
Then I
think
see
we
some
have
other folks that are at the high level.
reasonably honest audience.
Yeah, this is great. So the poll numbers are coming through. I don't know if everyone can see that, but I know we can. This is good. You're right. All right. As a matter of fact, let me ask you a quick question. I'm going to push a poll up here real quick.
Eric, really, wait a moment. Before you go on, Eric says 6 to 7. I'm impressed. And at some point, Eric, I'd love to connect with you and find out what you're doing and how you've achieved that. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
He probably took one of your classes, Peter.
Ah, there you go.
Great to see you. Love it. This is good. I got a question for folks. And I'm going to pop it up here on the screen here for just a moment. In just a moment. Let me pop this up. You should be seeing it about right now.
Yep.
And so if you think about your success in sales and your lost deals, how many of your lost opportunities do you feel are due to just poor discovery? If you had better discovery, less than 20%, greater than 20. I see the numbers coming in. A lot of folks, I'm going to share the results with you in just a moment. I'm going to give you just another. All right. We're at 25 responses with over 50 attendees. We'll give you just another moment. Oh, this is insightful. This is good. Tell you what, I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. If you haven't voted and you want to, go ahead. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll for now. Let me share the results with you. Check it out. Can everyone see the results there, Peter? Alex?
Yes.
What do you think?
Good
Not surprising. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a good distribution, isn't it? The interesting that nobody's called out 80%. So of course there are always different reasons why you may lose a deal. But the net is that most people are saying that there's a significant portion of deals, of those lost deals, can be attributed to poor discovery.
It's interesting. You know, if I think about deal size and your ACV, one of the things that always pops in my head when I see numbers like this, so I'm seeing the majority at 20 to 40%, about 44% of respondents said that was a thing. What if you could win just a fraction of that 20 to 40%? What would that do for your ACV or your personal quote? Kind of interesting to think about. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'll stop sharing the results and jump onto the next slide because I've got some numbers that I want to share with you. Tell me if any of these make sense. Check it out. First, 85%. Second, 78%. And third, 68%. In your chat dialog box, anyone have any idea what I'm talking about or what these numbers refer to? I'll give you just a moment. Well, here's the deal. These are elements reps struggle most with in discovery. Let me reveal a little bit more. So first, 85% struggle to get the prospect to open up and talk. Crazy. I find that in a lot of the customers I work with, this is absolutely the case. 78% said this. They struggle to get to that level 5 that we talked about, the impact, or level 3, the impact. And 68%, so they lacked enough industry and persona knowledge to have really incredible conversations with their prospects and so forth. 85, 78, 68% in ways that people struggle. Let me stop there for just a moment. Peter, Alex, what are your thoughts on this?
Well,
These
first,
are
just a comment. These numbers come from the Kuvama study, and so this is really intriguing. And Alex, I'll invite you to comment first.
Yeah, well, we're going to dive into this as we go through the session, so I won't dwell on it too much now. I think the to pick out on the 68% one, just to be clear on that, what we found is that reps, they have enough knowledge to get started. This was really about going deeper in your levels of discovery. I think it makes sense that everyone knows that you want to go deeper, you want to uncover the why behind the why, ask multiple questions. And but a lot of reps said that they struggled with that credibility. Sometimes it's the credibility or the confidence or the knowledge to be able to ask those extra questions and really get to the compelling reason for change. So we'll talk about more of this as we go through. But yes, the net of it all was there's a gap. There's a clear gap.
Yeah. Hey, so Eric Webb asked a quick question. He said, does this research come from account executives or SCs and pre-sales?
So again, absolutely account executives. So we'll explore a little bit more about the nature of the survey that we did. But we talked to around 35 different B2B SaaS organizations, organizations that have complexity in what they're selling, that have a need to do discovery, that have a need to communicate the value, that have a need often for a pre-sales team as well, those types of organizations. And it was a mixture of account executives and first-line managers or managers who still were very closely involved in that frontline sales activity.
Yeah, makes sense. That's great. Hey, quick comment, Bill. By the way, it just simply said, seems particularly the case in Europe is that it's people struggle to get their prospects to open up. It said Americans seem more willing to be open in discovery, which is interesting. I don't know if we need to cover that, but it's an interesting point.
It is an interesting point, and it's anecdotally I have heard that. I think there's always a difference between what level of opening up does opening up really mean. In that, again, getting started with a conversation is different than actually diving down into, okay, what is the real impact that you're struggling with in your business? What happens if you don't do that? Getting people to answer those questions. But I think there can be a more of a hesitation sometimes for sharing knowledge in European businesses. But
it's actually, oh, sorry,
Peter. To be clear on the study, this was global organizations and a healthy amount of American reps and sales leaders involved in this study.
And I was going to comment that it's actually the challenge in getting people to open up is universal. It slides in difficulty almost as you move east from the California West Coast in a linear fashion as you go from California, from Silicon Valley to the Midwest, to the East Coast of the US. As you hit the UK, it gets a little bit tougher. As you hit the continents, even tougher. And if you continue onwards to Asia Pacific, it can be frighteningly difficult. And of course, as somebody pointed out here, that doesn't even government organizations are almost off the scale for a range of different reasons. However, there is almost always a tipping point, which is something we'll talk about in terms of our recommendations getting to the end. In other words, at some point, people are willing, in fact, eager to go through a discovery conversation if they actually have a problem they're looking to solve. So for complex offerings and complex problems and solutions, people actually want to be discovered once you have earned sufficient credibility, which touches on this last point, the lack of industry and persona knowledge. So there you go.
Very good. Hey, I want to transition to this next slide and really just for a moment, quick moment, take a perspective and a look at what the critical role of discovery is in sales. Peter, you shared this in your book. I pulled it, which is doing discovery is the still most single important element of sales and buying processes. In the absence of sufficient discovery, sellers and buyers are both flying blind, each guessing and hoping the capabilities offered will match their customers' needs. So Peter, real quick, I'm curious, what's discovery?
What's discovery? What is not discovery? Let me tell you a story that I have seen repeat easily hundreds of times, which is a A vendor sets up a discovery conversation or discovery call with a prospect, goes through literally 5 to 7 minutes of discovery, which is sufficient to confirm that the prospect has a problem. And then guess what the vendor does? Anybody, type in your chat dialog box. What do you think the vendor does? Let's see, or Alex or Paul. Alex knows. Thanks, Ed. Pitch deck. Tom, yeah, jump to the demo. Pitch deck. Yeah, it's 5 to 7 minutes of actual discovery to confirm that the patient actually is bleeding profusely, and then they take the patient on a tour of the hospital. Look at all this fabulous equipment and doctors. So the biggest challenge here is actually investing time in discovery and holding, if you will, your offerings and solutions behind your back for the present. But to answer Paul's question, what is discovery? It's the process of uncovering sufficient information to be able, as a vendor, to propose a precise solution to your prospect's problem. That's discovery. It's not qualification. Qualification is a subset. So there you go.
Hey, here's a question, Alex. This is for you. All you have to give me is a yes or no. Does discovery ever end?
No, it's I mean it's a loaded question. Obviously, it's a loaded question, but it's a really interesting one, because you know, this is something we heard in the research. We heard a number of the reps. They did say, you know, discovery doesn't end until you close the deal. Actually, it doesn't end until you've lost that customer, churned that customer at some point, hopefully many, many years from now. Discovery, we're talking here about the role of discovery in sales. Discovery is just as important, but often underappreciated in customer success as well.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, why is discovery important? I think you just started to hit on something.
Yeah, so it's partly on the customer success side, partly because we've all been in this situation where discovery hasn't been done perfectly well in the sales cycle and hasn't been handed over to the customer success team, in which case they have to start from scratch. If they're going to manage a relationship on anything other than just simply what the customer's bought, they've got to start from scratch. So they need the skills. But say it has been handed over, they've been managing a success plan. 6 months later, the stakeholders have changed, the strategy's changed, things change. The CSM needs to discover ongoing what are the latest goals and objectives of that company, and how are you delivering against those. It's never simply it's rarely simply a look at the dashboard and it gives you the answer. So in terms of why it's important, hugely important, I think, across the entire journey. The couple of things that we heard on when we interviewed reps, though, is fundamentally the vast majority of them understood it was important and understood it was, number one, the difference between winning or losing. It's, you know, especially in today's environments, companies will only buy if what you're selling links to a strategic objective, if it solves a burning pain that's putting one of their strategic objectives at risk. So it's the difference between winning or losing. And if you can't connect your solution more in a more compelling way to solving that pain, then you're going to lose to the competition. But more so than ever before, it's the difference between winning or losing fast. You know, I think we've all been through those, you know, sales cycles that drag on and on and on, and actually sometimes it's better just to qualify out faster. So we're talking about the word discovery here, but there's a healthy overlap with qualification, and sometimes qualifying out early because the customer doesn't have a burning pain or they don't have any business metrics associated with that is a really good result for the salesperson. A great phrase, a phrase that I loved when we did this research. We heard this phrase numerous times: no metrics, no sale. No metrics,
that's good.
If there's no metrics associated with these problems, they ain't going to buy anything. So move on.
So I was going to add a quick observation here. If anybody has ever gone to a doctor and then gone back to that same doctor some period of time afterwards, what's the first thing that doctor asks you? If it's a normal checkup or anything, what's the first thing that doctor asks you? Anybody, type it into your chat dialog box for a second or third visit. What do they say? Well, Chris is, how are you? Okay, yeah, there we go. Anything changed? How are you? Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, any changes, any changes, any changes while you're back. Yeah, what is different? So that discovery never ends. However, a big piece of discovery needs to be done in the first few discussions. You need to have a goal in mind. You need to have an objective in mind of what you need to capture prior to moving forward. And that is to enable you to be able to propose, everybody type it in your chat dialog box, a precise solution. All right, let's continue.
Yeah, let's go. And so the question is, I think we've touched on this a bit, but do reps recognize the importance of discovery as well, which kind of leads me just to the next slide here. And so, Alex, do reps truly recognize the importance of discovery?
So,
in your opinion?
Yeah, as we said, we ran this research. I think it's got to serve at a good section of the market, and I think it was interesting because we can all be kind of, judgmental isn't the right word. We always there's a lot of stereotypes thrown out there about sometimes some certain segments of the sales community being lazy and rushing to demos because it's the easiest path. However, what we uncovered in the research was that the vast majority of the reps absolutely did recognize the importance. They absolutely recognized that this has an impact on their ability to do their job, to hit their numbers, to save themselves time. So yeah, going back to that perception of sometimes they'll take the shortest path, absolutely, but they recognize that good discovery means that I'm working on the right opportunities. So again, we heard things around and again, I think it's very applicable in the current economic climate where less customers are buying and you've got smaller teams. The reps recognize that it helps them be efficient, helps them make sure they're working on the right accounts. So why don't they always do good discovery? So the whole point of the report is that there are gaps, and if it's not a mindset issue, then it's an execution issue. It's an enablement issue. So I'm not saying the mindset is perfectly there, but for the most part, we found that the mindset was there. They have, the vast majority of sales reps that have been around in the industry for a few years, they've had training, they've been through the training. The, MEDIC and MEDPIC is probably the #1 methodology we came across in the research. Very dominant when it comes to larger, complex sales. Is it a sales methodology? Is it qualification methodology? You can call it different things, but loads of the reps that we interviewed had been trained on MEDPIC. They knew what the acronym, they knew what the letters stand for. They understood the benefit of doing this, but they struggled in the execution. They struggled to actually go out there and lead that conversation. They struggled to, the first letter in MEDPIC is metrics. And a lot of the reps, one of the key things they struggle with is, it's hard to actually get to the impact. It's hard to uncover those metrics. So yeah, mindset is there. They recognize the importance, but are struggling.
They struggle, which is interesting. So what causes the struggle? What's the root cause? And I've got a slide I'd love to take you to, because I think there's numerous things that folks have been struggling with. So from your research, tell us more.
Yep. So we've already exposed a couple of these numbers in the session already, and generated a bit of chat on them. So yeah, the #1 item, which is a really interesting one, but it's obvious when you think about it, in that discovery is a conversation. It has to be a conversation. So if that conversation isn't two-way, if the prospect won't open up and engage with you, then the rep is going to struggle. Now, this isn't black and white. It's not all or nothing. I think reps, what we heard is that they will be able to get certain pieces of information out of the prospect, but they found a lot of buyers, a lot of buying organizations were often closed off to go in deeper, or the reps felt that they were closed off. They felt that pressure. They felt that they were struggling to get that customer to open. And often the customer has spoken to 5 vendors already this week, and there is some discovery fatigue. So if you're not bringing value to that conversation, if you're not building that credibility, and we'll talk more about how you do that, but if you're not doing that, then you've got a customer sitting opposite you, kind of just wanting information and sometimes being unwilling to answer your million questions that you're posing at them. Second in the list, talking about business impact and outcomes, or uncovering. There's two elements to this. There's the words here say talking about, which is absolutely true. A lot of reps are less comfortable when it comes to diving into KPIs and metrics. It can feel a little bit of a dark art. It can feel a little bit of the territory of the business value engineering function, which, and a lot of those functions have been scaled back. So this is something reps need to be able to do. But it wasn't just the comfort level of the rep in asking these questions. They also said that, hey, sometimes the customer doesn't know. Sometimes the person I'm engaging with doesn't know or doesn't have the answers. And that's a really interesting one. That actually often indicates that you're talking to the wrong person, or you know what, that's a brilliant opportunity to go and engage again and get to the people who do know. So often it's that the fact that the fact that the audience doesn't have the answer the first time is actually a wonderful opportunity rather than a blocker. Third in this list is connecting the pain to the critical business issue. So what do we really mean here? It's interestingly, the third from the bottom is uncovering a pain point. So the vast majority of reps said, yeah, I get to some level of pain, which goes back to your 7 levels of discovery from earlier on, Paul. The vast majority of them at least felt they're at level 1. They get to at least some level of pain. There's still 15% don't. But connecting that pain to a critical business issue, 72% of them said that they struggled to get to the compelling reason for change. They didn't always use the phrase critical business issue, but they fundamentally recognized just because a customer has some problems doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it, doesn't mean they will actually sponsor a project and buy, and therefore they need to get to that compelling reason, and they struggled. That required extra skills, extra level of confidence, extra credibility, extra time to really uncover that, and often it's missing. So other things going on there, but some kind of interesting insights I think that we found as we spoke to people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Before you go on, curiosity story question. This is something that the story that I used to use in great demo workshops. How many of you in the audience have ever had a car that had a noise or a squeak or a sound for some moderate or long period of time? Type it into your chat dialog box. Did any of you ever have a car that had some kind of squeak, sound, or noise that kind of just bugged you, but you never did anything about it? Until, yeah, it looks like everybody. I'm sorry, Ian, about your wife. What caused you or your wife to get that car fixed? Most typically, yeah, especially after my kids started driving, what caused you to get that car fixed? When you had something important that it caused to not be possible to attend. So the example I give is you've had a squeak in a car and it's been going on for the past year and a half. You're driving on the way to the airport in a pouring rain to get on a plane for that most important customer meeting of the year, and the car dies on the side of the road. And what's happened is it's gone from just being an annoying pain to a critical business issue, one that is impacting your ability to achieve your goals and objectives. And that's the difference between a pain, which we all live with, and a critical business issue, which is really a goal or objective that is now at risk.
Absolutely. That's good. And I was going to ask you, Peter, with your personal experience, what do you think folks struggle with the most? And do you feel people are comfortable? Maybe we've answered this question to some extent. They're comfortable asking the right discovery questions.
So there's a number of different factors here. There are those who are comfortable and willing to ask questions, and they know what they need to capture. They know what they need to capture. That's a tiny subset. That's probably 1 to 5% of the total customer-facing population. There are those that know what they need to capture, but are uncomfortable in doing it. They don't know how to go about the process of actually having a conversation. That's what doing discovery book and workshops are all about. And then there are those that are comfortable having a conversation, but have no idea what they need to collect, which perhaps is the worst case because they're glib, but they're not purposeful. So as we move forward through this session, I think we'll touch on this a little bit more, but understanding what cadre you live in is important to seeking solutions. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for answering the question. So we established that, from the research here, that there's some challenges to getting the information, but you had said something, Peter, that a lot of folks know the right questions to ask. But I wonder if that's the case, because if they're struggling to get it, has enablement from companies and training been effective essentially to do it? There is a statistic, Alec, I'm going to pull up in just a moment, that I took from your research. You guys are ready. Check this out. It's quite enlightening. And Peter, it complements what you had just said to some extent. And I want to find out more about this because maybe there's something here. 81% of your respondents, Alex, said that they did not regularly use company-produced enablement to guide discovery conversations. So are companies doing enough? Is it enough? But what are they doing? What are they using? Tell me more.
Or what are they not using?
Exactly.
So, yeah, so the data behind this is that the vast majority of companies, based on the research, they do provide something for the reps. They do provide some documentation, a guide, a set of questions, a good set of questions to ask to do discovery. Exactly that kind of a cheat sheet, if you like.
And it's 8 pages.
Yeah, maybe it's in a PDF, maybe it's in an Excel file, maybe it's in an Excel file or Google Sheets that the rep is supposed to actually then complete as well. And it's typically accompanied with your classic enablement materials on, hey, how does our product help companies in this industry? What does this product do? Selection of case studies. However, we specifically asked, hey, when you're on the call, when you're actually live in discovery, what do you use? What are you using at that point in time? And the vast majority are not using anything that's officially come from the organization. What they are using is virtually everyone. So 84% said that they're using their own private notes tool. They are using a Google document or a Word document or Notion, that kind of something like that. A number of Apple Mac users said that they use the native Apple Notes tool. And actually, to be fair to the enablement piece, most reps said that they had incorporated some element of the standard marketing, sales enablement produced material, but what they then used themselves was their own document, which is interesting. Nobody uses CRM or anything like that. The next most common thing that they're using is case studies. Reps use these to prepare. Again, I'm going into a call. Let me figure out who have we worked with? Who do we work with that looks a little bit like this prospect I'm going to see? How do I help myself lead with a point of view? And then, of course, live on the call, they're trying to drop in little snippets of information. After the call, as you send your summary of great to talk to you today, prospect, here's what we talked about. The rep wants to drop in some examples of how we've solved similar problems with other customers. So case studies or success stories, quite significantly used. However, virtually all of the reps said that they were hard to find, overly long and complicated, hard to find the thing that's relevant. So what they want is a relevant story, not an irrelevant story. If you're sending across to your prospect a case study that is irrelevant, it's just spam. You're just spamming your prospect. Couple of other things here is, very few, only 32% of reps were using any kind of company-produced slide deck or presentation. And then the number on the right-hand side is the inverse of the 81%
Wow.
that we talked about. The last thing I think was interesting, really interesting, and again, apologies, I'm going to use that word multiple times in this session. We asked about call recording. So a lot of companies, an enormous amount of companies have invested in call recording, transcription, conversation intelligence. There are multiple vendors out there. Gong is probably the dominant player in that market. And it's often marketed as helping with discovery. We ask specifically, does it help you? Do you use it? So yes, it is on. It is recording the discovery call that the rep is doing, but only 18% of reps said that they go back and do anything with that recording. So they've taken their notes in their own notes document. Only 18% of them referred back to anything that was in the transcription that came from the call recording technology. So the net of all of this is there's a distinct gap in the enablement for reps. We can continually heard from them that this is important. They see the importance. We all agree that this has an impact on the results, but there's a real lack of enablement that is usable by the reps kind of live in the call.
Interesting. Wow, just an idea. If we only had AI that would just automatically create situation slides from the recorded. Anyway, I digress. Creative ideas. That's interesting. So we've highlighted some pretty important things here. 18% don't use their call recordings with any degree. 84%.
18% use their call recordings.
Only 18% use it. Thank
Correct.
you for the clarification.
So yeah, the call recording's there. There's a huge server in the cloud getting fat and fat
Bigger
and fat
bigger.
with all of these recordings, but only 18% of reps were actually going back
Curiosity question of the audience here. How many of you type this as a yes, comma, yes, or y, comma, y, or n, comma, y, etc.? How many of you, for the first part, have your calls recorded or record your calls? And the second one is, how many of you actually go back and look at them or read the transcripts carefully to either take data from them or improve your process? Let's see what you guys say. Really curious.
Yeah, just quick
Yes, yes.
call.
MG, good. Yes, no. Yes, 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 yes. No, no. Luciano. No, no, yes, no. No, and therefore no. Bert, you're clever. Yes, yes, and use AI. Okay, so it's an interesting mix. Carolyn, occasionally. You're honest. All right, let's continue.
Very good. So we've talked about like some of the struggles that reps have in getting discovery. We know how they're doing it. I'm curious, how are companies supporting this? I'd love to find out, maybe Pete or Alex, just a little bit more. Are most folks supported and trained on doing discovery? I know you had some thoughts here. Are there gaps in the current sales enablement process and methodologies? And what did you find? And as you're thinking about that for just a moment, I mean, the next thing we're also going to talk about is your recommendations and Peter's recommendations on how to fix it, which I think is where the brilliance of this entire session comes from. I wanted to set that as a baseline as we move in. So we know they struggle. They do it on their own, primarily. What's happening in the world of corporate support?
Yeah, so I'm sure, Peter, you'll want to chip in on this as well in your kind of experience on this. So again, we looked at what methodologies or what training kind of reps had, yet we're still struggling. So I think the first big gap is that there are there's a myriad of different sales training programs that are run. Most organizations will have deployed some kind of methodology to their team. I mentioned MEDPIC earlier. That's just an example of many. The challenge with that type of training and methodology is that it often does a good job, often a very good job of educating the mindset, of getting reps to realize why discovery is important, the kind of information that is needed to be uncovered, and maybe kind of techniques in how to engage in the sales cycle, etc. But the fundamental thing that's missing is the help with the execution. So great example with, again, the M in MEDPIC, or maybe the I is implicate the pain. What is missing is the ability for that rep to go in and actually be more of a challenger. So to be fair, I think the challenger sales methodology does heavily focus on this, but from the survey we didn't find that as dominant. But key element of that is enabling the rep to lead with a point of view, that engages the audience, to lead with, hey, we know your type of company. This is what we've seen with other companies like you. We think, other people are struggling with problem X, Y, and Z, and that's having an impact on your business of A, B, and C. That kind of information or that kind of training, that kind of enablement that a rep can actually use live on a call is missing from so many of the sales methodology courses.
It kind of correlates back to level 5, transitioning or re-engineering the vision of your clients, supporting the challenger model. Just wanted to call that out. That's level 5 of Peter's discovery methodology.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And it correlates back to the point we said earlier about getting the engagement with the prospect. You can be trained to know all of the questions that you want to ask, but if the prospect won't engage and really open up, those questions a little bit are worthless. But kind of jumping ahead to some of our recommendations, one of the key things that we recommend and we see does work well with reps is where they're able to lead with that point of view, you engage the audience. The prospect is always much more likely to react and to respond and start open conversation when they have something to react to. So even if it isn't perfect, if you're leading with a point of view that isn't spot on, it's still going to generate that conversation. So that's a fundamental thing missing from sales methodologies. Discovery guides, too many of them are generic. It's a guide that is applicable for all industries. Exactly. It's printed out. You just, if you have that kind of printed out guide or PDF guide, it's never going to be, it's impossible for it to be specific for industry A versus industry B, persona X versus persona Y. So that can be damaging. And again, I think another big gap is that there is a tendency to deploy a methodology and then stick some fields in the CRM to say, hey, hey, salesperson, you need to complete these fields in order to proceed to the next step in the next stage in the pipeline, in the process. And whilst it's not a bad idea, it fundamentally just becomes a box ticking exercise. It doesn't actually help the rep to get the information. It's just a way of allowing them to check a box to say that they've done it.
So a couple of quick comments on this. Sales methodologies tend to be very thin on why one would want to collect certain information. They're very good on what information should be collected, but only at a high level, like the Emma's metrics. And they're almost entirely lacking on enabling the skills, providing the skills, detailing the how one could actually go about collecting that information. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you had a discovery guide from the organization that if you actually followed it, it would truly feel like an inquisition to your prospect? That's one of the challenges of the generic guide, any discovery guides for the most part, because they're not structured to actually enable a true conversation to take place. There's no opportunity, for example, for curiosity. Oh, I've never heard that before, etc. And of course, the classic reality day with respect to CRM systems, a colleague of mine pointed out that CRM systems are the world's least accurate databases in use today. Move ahead.
Very good. So this is interesting. Peter, I got a kind of a follow-up question here, just a thought. From your perspective, are there other specific gaps that exist in enabling reps to practice those live conversations? So you mentioned the guides and so forth. We know some gaps exist. Maybe this is a better question for the next slide, which is our recommendations as well.
Yeah.
Think about that for just a moment. So we've kind of established that, hey, people really struggle with it. They're using their own techniques. Company and corporate enablement really doesn't give folks exactly what they need. They may give you a spreadsheet or a list of high-level questions. They certainly don't teach you the best way to ask it and get clients to open up. But this is where I'm really intrigued and I want to know, like, what are your recommendations? How do we get more information and the right information so that we can increase success in sales? So let me hit this next slide, and Alex, let me open it up to you. We've established the problem. What's your recommendations on how to fix it, at least initially?
So the number one is something we've touched on a few times already in this session, but let's dive a little deeper. I think our clear recommendation is the behavior you want your rep to drive is to be leading with a point of view, be able to come into the meeting with, they've done the research, they know at a high level the industry this company's in, the types of business problems they're struggling with. It establishes credibility, obviously, but it also drives that engagement with the audience. It drives the prospect to engage. You can have somebody that is sitting there with their arms crossed, sorry, and they're closed off. They just want you to, just show me the solution, just give me the price, etc. But if you're able to explain that, well, I want to, before I position the solution to you, I want to understand, how do you compare to these other customers? There are different ways to explain and position that this is what we see with companies similar to you, and it just gives them something to react to. So there's multiple ways of then the rep can utilize that information. Now, how do you get there? How do you actually enable that rep? It takes some work to map out your value proposition. That credibility, that enabling the rep to lead with that point of view means that as a company, you need to invest some time to map out which are the segments that the rep is going to be engaging. So maybe the industries, the personas, the different levels of maturity. It might vary based on the fundamental type of business problem they're looking to solve and the solution you're offering. So for that segmentation, you should have mapped out and documented what are the typical business problems that you solve. How do you solve them? What is the typical business impact that those problems are having currently on a customer's organization? And therefore, by solving those, how will you eliminate that negative impact and deliver a positive impact? So turn a pain into a gain. You need to have that mapped out. That is an incredibly valuable investment to empower that rep to go in with a point of view and drive an engaging discovery conversation. Of course, you then have there's the question of how do you enable that live? Again, platforms like Kavama and others can help with that kind of live execution. Let me kind of pause for a second, because I know, Peter, you've got Peter and Paul, you've got great ideas of how to systemize some of that point of view and that library of value propositions.
So Bert just commented that notice how all three recommendations call it a conversation. That is the key. The question then becomes, how do you begin a conversation such that it can flow? And I'll offer in our Doing Discovery book, the training sessions offer several approaches, two of which include, number one, being a little bit amusing, if not cagey, on your initial opening. So for example, I love to say, right at the very beginning, hey, before we get into this conversation, tell me, how did you ascend to this position of power and authority at company X? And why do I ask that question? Does anybody know? Type in your chat dialog box. Because people love to talk and are most comfortable talking about whom? And the answer is, of course, themselves. So yeah, thank you, Luca. So this is a very, very simple, very elegant way of actually opening people up. And even in that initial conversation of person's background or the history of whatever, you begin to gain some interesting observations and information on that person. That's that's a tip. One of the best ways to engage a prospect who is interested but yet cautious, as Alex said, is to share an example of how you've helped other customers in potentially similar situations. That is the essence of an informal success story, and that is the process that a vision generation demo delivers. When that prospect says, hey, I just want to get an idea of what your product does, and the vendor says, well, we need to understand your situation. You have this disparity. You've got this barrier between what they're trying to accomplish. A vision generation demo is the crisp solution to that challenge. So I'll stop there for now, since we're tight on time.
Leave it just that. Wait a second. You said a vision generation demo is the way to do that. And if I would summarize that, it's a great way to establish credibility. Give me another moment. I know we're getting close to the end of time. Tell me more about this vision generation concept. I think I know where you might want to go with it. Maybe it's a situation slide, but would you just give us a little bit more? Because I think
Go to the situation slide.
slides are certainly helpful, but tell me about it from a discovery perspective as well. Here's an example.
Well,
I've got one. Hang on. Here it is. Here's an example
there you
situation.
go. So this is what we teach in Great Demo and Doing Discovery. This is a structured way of capturing and recommunicating information, but for several potential purposes. So what you're looking at here could be the result, the crisp and Crispin's result of a successful discovery conversation or conversations. It also could be the entrance to a discovery conversation. So we can do this both ways. So for example, I might say, Paul, you click the book a demo button. You're interested in getting a sense of what our tools can do. Before I dive into the software, let me share with you how we've helped other heads of sales of similar sized organizations achieve their objectives. And you go through this slide crisply, and then you ask, hey, Paul, how does this compare with your situation? Paul then walks through this, says, well, yeah, I've got to make my numbers. There's a lot of errors in our forecast. It's semi-managed. So you get a comparison versus this. This is a delightful way to drive the conversation. And if the prospect is in alignment with what kinds of things you can offer, you then say, hey, as part of the vision generation process, would you like an example or two of how other customers are actually using our capabilities? And you share one or two or three compelling screens that actually illustrate what this prospect, this now customer is actually doing. So a situation slide is a tool that is a delightful currency of discovery communication because it leads the process, it leads the process through a vision generation demo. Post conversation, it represents what this particular prospect told you. And now you can pass it from sales rep to pre-sales to implementation to customer success. Oh my gosh, what a valuable piece of currency. How's that?
Absolutely. So, Alex, you said lead with a point of view, to share a story and use storytelling in your discovery approach. Of course, we know that builds credibility and trust and so forth. Peter, the situation slide looks like a perfect way to tell a story because it also captures something that I think we said that's very important as well. As a matter of fact, if I digress for just a moment, if I renamed this particular webinar, I might call it this: no metrics, no deal. So what it looks like you've done here, Peter, is you've established value, criticality, and you've told a story and got a customer to start talking about that comparison. Interesting, because we had numerous recommendations that we shared. Hey, we're about out of time. I wanted to move into summary, but before we do, any other thoughts, comments, observations that either of you at the moment would like to share about situation slides or anything that we've talked about? Certainly want to take it to Q&A for our attendees as well. Let me open it up.
I want to tell a story that took place a number of years ago, and that is when I was building up a $30 million business and had a pretty sizable sales team. We noticed that we were hiring people that were really good at doing presentations and telling things, but not so skilled at doing discovery. And we thought for a minute and suddenly realized it's one of those, you know what? In our interviewing process, we are only assessing their ability to tell. We would do a phone interview, we might bring them in for a face-to-face, and then we would ask them to do a presentation. And on the strength of that, we might make a hire. And so we added a piece to the process. What do you think it was? Either of you, Paul or Alex? Any guesses, or the audience? We said, we'd like you to come in and do a discovery conversation over the phone, face-to-face, don't care. And then on what you learn from that call, we want you to do a demo of presentation whatsoever. So the summary was, prior to making that change, we were assessing the ability of our reps and pre-sales folks and customer success folks to tell and present. After making that change, we were assessing those same performers' ability to ask as well as tell. Fascinating changes took place as a result of that. They were all positive. So there you go.
Yeah,
Very good.
I just want to chip in, Paul, and say that I think this is a wonderful summary of both how you can structure some of the proposition, the point of view that you want your reps to lead with, exactly as you said. How you can then personalize and capture, okay, for this specific customer, because again, whenever we talk about leading with a point of view, that doesn't mean that is the answer. It means that you are presenting a point of view, but you're tailoring it as, you know, as part of the challenger. It's the teach and then the tailor element. And it's also a wonderful way of then capturing those customer success stories. So it's effectively the same key information you
I agree.
utilize throughout this set of solutions.
And we've got a couple questions.
Thomas just asked a really, really good question. Doing discovery, you talk about sale often trying to create a compelling event or critical date. He notes do nothing or no decision is often the biggest competitor. You are not alone, sir. On average, 45% of all forecasted opportunities today end up as a no decision outcome, a do nothing outcome. So the answer to your question is twofold. One is, during discovery, seek to uncover if your prospect actually has a compelling event or critical date. If they do not, if they can live with this going forward and there's no reason to, no date by when a change is required, that is a candidate for a no decision outcome. The additional solution to that is to suggest critical dates or critical events, such as in the form of questions. Are you expecting a divestiture, a merger, a major change in your business, end of life of a product, relicensing event? Generate a list of probable or typical critical dates and use that to help, let's say, suggest to your prospect. But run like heck if they don't have a critical date, because that sales opportunity will kick the can down the road forever. Thomas, hope that helps.
Very good. Hey, we're coming into just the last few moments. You know, Alex, you and Peter, thank you both, first of all, for the amazing insights that you shared with folks today. It's been a pleasure. Alex, I should probably ask you, because there may be folks that don't know, who's Kavama and what do you do? The insights have been fantastic. But tell me real quick, who's Kavama?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we help our customers to sell outcomes, not products. So that's fundamentally what we're doing discovery here for. We're aiming to kind of sell a solution, not just pitch features and functions. And I would say that there was three key things we do for our customers. We help map out that value proposition that we've been talking about. So to really understand what are the business problems you solve for your customers. We then, through our technology platform, enable the salespeople to execute on that discovery in a more consistent way so that they can lead with a point of view and capture and personalize the value discovery, the value case that is applicable to that customer, and linking to the point that Thomas was raising on the webinar chat about trying to create that compelling case for change. Often one of the best ways to do that is to quantify the cost of inaction, to turn it into a quantified, here's the amount of the money that you can make from this. So that's the final kind of key piece that Kavama helps our customers with.
And I will add that I am an absolutely huge fan and supporter of Kavama. It will change your business for the better, folks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. Hey, we summarized today. I'll leave you with a couple thoughts. No metrics, no sale. We know that 72% struggle to get to the criticality of the issue. And without that CBI, you have nothing to measure, essentially. You can't get the impact. 84% of people are using their own notes. And a lot of people aren't using them effectively, is what we've learned today. But there's several recommendations. Lead with your point of view. Enable and establish credibility with folks. You must dive into the impact and the value that your solution is providing in each of these things. And of course, Peter shared the situation slide as a way to accommodate that, to tell a perfect story, to use a vision generation approach, essentially, to engage in that storytelling capabilities, increase your trust and credibility. Concluding thought, Peter?
Yeah, situation slide. Think of the situation slide as in two forms. First of all, it is the tangible output of discovery conversation. And if you think of it in terms of it being the visible portion of an iceberg above the surface, that's a beautiful analogy, because if you can't see it, you're sunk.
There you go. Hey, to the attendees, we want to thank you. Your interaction, the chat, the feedback, the questions have been fantastic. This entire series essentially have never stopped learning, and the webinar portion of that series is created for you, the trailblazers, the frontliners that are making a difference. We're the innovation, and you are the innovators of this industry. We just allow you, and thank you for allowing us to share this information with you. The last screen here is some of our contact information. We'll follow up with a recording of the webinar link as well as the Kuvama report. And just wanted to say thank you again. We appreciate your attendance and participation today. With that, we'll conclude. Wish everyone the very best. And as always, happy selling.